Okay. Hi, everybody. Um, it's a pleasure to be here. I think everything's working out okay. Um, Crowdcast is a little funny for me, so sorry if this is a bit of a rough start. But in any event, welcome to Mahamudra for the People. I think this is session 8. And for today's session, after we do a little bit of meditation, I'm going to continue on from where I left off last week. Last week and the week prior, I've covered the view. The view being within the context of Mahamudra, how we ought to understand the mind's essential nature. And so after the view, then we have the path. And then after that, we have the fruit. And the fruit is, basically experience of awakened mind. The path is the path of practice, which we've all been doing, but we'll kind of get into it a little bit more deeply shortly. But for now, I was hoping we could do a little bit of meditation. In the way that we've been doing this in the past, just try and allow yourself to be as comfortable as possible. Allow your body to rest in a position that's comfortable. Take some time to just kind of get into your breath a little bit. Allow yourself to inhale whatever it is that you need in this moment. And exhale any exhaustion or stress or anxiety. Anything that we're looking to get rid of right now. And if it helps, you can inhale. As you inhale, you can imagine inhaling either rainbow-colored light or white light to be kind of whatever positive resources you need. Allow that to really kind of sink into your being, and try and, if you can, like hold it low in your belly. And when you exhale, you can exhale any negative energy, negative emotions, negative associations from anything that especially that we're just coming out of in the experience prior to this session. So sometimes in this tradition, one of my teachers, Bokor Rinpoche, taught to do this 3 times, this kind of cycle of inhaling this light. And we can imagine actually inhaling it through our nostrils, or we could also include a kind of very deep and subtle breathing through our pores as well. So it's kind of like our whole being is inhaling and exhaling that way as well. And just allow ourselves a little bit of like the union of purification and setting the intention for meditation practice. We'll do that a little bit. And then as we settle into meditation, allow yourself to place the mind according to Tilopa's 6 nails. So as we settle, we want to be able to settle in a way in which we sever all discursive attachment to whatever it is that's come before this session. and severing any anticipatory curiosity about what comes next. And then severing any idea about this particular moment we're in. And severing any identification with the fact that we may feel that there's something we need to do in this moment. Severing the need to analyze. If we can, allow yourself to just rest and relax into this moment. And we'll sit for a little while. If you get distracted, that's okay. Just bring your awareness back to whatever it is that you're using to anchor at the mind. Be that awareness of the breath as you inhale and exhale. Or a physical object in front of you. Or a visualized object. And try and maintain your awareness in a way that's sensitive to the points that Tilopa highlights in his 6 nails. And try and return to this moment of freshness. And slowly, as you're ready, just make a little mental note of what that experience was like for you. And bring yourself back to the group. So we've got folks from all over this afternoon: New Mexico, Canada, Vermont, Arkansas. I hope everyone's doing okay today. So before I start, I want to see if anybody has any questions about their Mahamudra practice up till now. So you can ask a question in the question box, or down at the bottom of the page, or right in the text box on the side. And in a little bit, we'll begin to look at the path. So one of the most important pieces of the path is how we practice, right? How we actually do meditation. And so I'm going to review that as well. Should there be no questions? So typically, at least according to the tradition, one sits in meditation posture. It doesn't have to be full lotus position. It could be half. It could be, and again, it could be, whatever it is that feels comfortable. We want to have our back straight a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. So we'll do a quick review of Tilopa 6 nails after I do a quick review of how to sit. Thank you, Brett. So we sit comfortably with our back straight. It's described that our shoulders should be kind of spread like the wings of a vulture. So kind of, we should allow our chest to be open, with our shoulders kind of go back a little bit, just, not so that we're kind of hunched forward, but we want to be kind of open. Our hands can be placed in the meditation mudra on your lap, or your hands on your knees. You want to allow yourself to kind of have the confidence that while you sit in meditation posture, that your experience brings great gravity to the moment. So sometimes this is kind of described by the instruction: when you sit like a mountain. With that kind of rooting in stability. The tradition goes a little further and says that our chin should just be ever so lightly kind of pointed downward. Our tongue on the roof of our mouth, kind of gently just held by the roof of the mouth. We want to make sure that our jaw is not clenched. So Cooper asks if it matters which hand you have on top. No, not so much. So whatever feels comfortable. Sometimes the instructions say that you want to have, I've got an overbite, so this really isn't possible with me, but you want to kind of keep your jaw relaxed such that you could gently insert a needle between, or almost like a sheet of paper between your teeth, so it's not clenched. But you can rest your jaw in a way that's not clenched and not be able to do that thing with the needle. We shouldn't obsess if, we can't do these things. And so this is how it's described that we should anchor the body. Now our gaze, some texts say it should be lowered a little bit, just somewhat like 4 finger widths from your nose. So some point over there. Well, that's what the tradition teaches. My teachers have taught me to look up, directly in front of me, so you can look directly with your eyes open. If it helps, you can allow your concentration to settle on an actual image that's in your field of reference in front of you. That could be, whatever is in front of you that allows you to just keep a sense of being focused, not in an obsessive way, but just gently centering you to the experience in the moment. So that's one way of anchoring the mind. So we anchor the body through the meditation position. We anchor the mind through having something upon which we kind of concentrate to some extent. So it can be a physical object in your field of reference. Of course, it can also be your breath. So maintaining an awareness of every inhalation and exhalation. In some texts said that if it allows you to concentrate even more single-pointedly, that we can bring our awareness to each inhalation and exhalation and count 1. Inhalation, exhalation, 2. Inhalation, exhalation, 3. And either up to 7 or 21, and then start over again. Now, in full disclosure, I've never really liked that. I think I find numbers very distracting. So that's never something I felt comfortable with, so I don't use that. But just the somatic experience of breathing. And the other thing you can use as a way of anchoring the mind is a visualized object. So for those who are comfortable doing that, you can visualize like an image of the Buddha or your teacher or something directly in front of you or on the crown of your head. And just focusing our experience by maintaining that presence. And times when our experience becomes a little agitated or as if we're aerated to some extent, kind of a little, but having a hard time concentrating. We can visualize a little black sphere or ball or the size of a pea down by your navel. And focusing on that has a way of kind of just bringing all of the energy down when we feel like everything is a little kind of active and frenetic. Maybe when we're a little too spacey. And similarly, if we begin to feel very sluggish, we can then concentrate on a white pea-sized shape right in the center of our brow. And then the last way that we can anchor the mind is to anchor it on no object, either real or visualized, but with our gaze open and using the awareness of whatever thoughts are arising in the moment as the anchor. So remaining mindful and aware of thought activity as it arises. And using the experience of either thought activity or the absence of thought activity, depending on what's happening in the moment, as the way we focus the mind. And then as we do that, then we end up using Tilopa's 6 nails as the point of, I guess you could say, the point of reference for how we do this meditation. And so the 6 nails are not, necessarily meant to be thought of as like aphorisms or something like that, but rather, a piece of advice or an instruction on how we can sit, right? So the first point is to let go of past experiences. And so that means letting go of what happened 3 seconds ago, as well as what happened 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, or this morning when we awoke, or last night before we went to sleep, or the past week, or the past month, or the past year, the past. To try and shut that door. So as we place ourselves, we anchor our body, we anchor our mind, we let go of the past. Just be able to be here. And then similarly, that's the first nail. The second nail is to let go of any attachment to an outcome in the future. So it could be what our plans are for later tonight, or the weekend, or later this summer, whatever we've been thinking about. Just try and cut that too. So we let go of the past and we let go of the future. And the third nail is to let go of even this moment. Right? So to let go of ideas about the moment you're in New Mexico, in Toronto, in Vermont, in Arkansas, wherever we are. To let go of this moment as having any particular kind of qualities or anything. Just cut that. The fourth nail is to try and rest into this experience without the need to do anything. So sometimes this is described as not modulating the experience. Just letting whatever happens, whatever arises, whatever is experienced, without altering it in any way. Without needing to change the experience that's happening right now. And then the fifth instruction is to not analyze what's happening. And so this is kind of like putting down the need to assess, oh, is this session good? Or is this bad? Am I a good meditator or not good? What is happening right now? We want to be able to be aware of whatever is happening right now without being very discursive and kind of trying to pick away at whatever is arising. That's the fifth nail. So the sixth nail is to relax into this moment and just rest. right? So kind of reiterate all of the 5 preceding points by just resting. No past, no future, no now. No need to modulate, control. No need to analyze. Just rest. So does anyone have any questions up to this point? About anything? Okay. So I'm going to share a little bit more from this song by Lama Shan called The Ultimate Supreme Path of Mahamudra. And you can find it in The Mind of Mahamudra, translated by Peter Allen Roberts. There's this version, which is kind of the abbreviated, kind of essential version of this, which is like 250 pages, a little more than 260 pages. And there's like a much bigger book on this. Here's a question. So Sai, Sai asks, at one point I mentioned sometimes that I don't prefer the breath, using breath as the anchor, as a shamatha anchor, because it's too somatic, and instead prefer visualizing a white light between your brow or third eye. Could you speak a bit about too somatic and also that visualized anchor? Yeah, so we even though there's a kind of diverse set of ways that we can place both the body and the mind, in the practice. When we see these meditation instructions, it's not necessarily the case that we need to kind of go through these sequentially, where, we could say using the physical object right in front of us. So, my computer right now is a little bit elevated, and right now I'm just allowing myself to very gently focus my visual consciousness on the letter J, on the J key of the keyboard. Right, so that's kind of like, in a way, the most gross because it's visual, perhaps. I don't know if that's the most accurate way of saying that. Breathing and counting never really worked for me. So and closing my eyes. So my teachers always emphasized practicing with my eyes open. And the breathing piece, I found, my personal experience is that it was never comfortable, because it just kind of led me right back to this experience of body, like the eye within this fleshy form, and would lead me to then kind of just be kind of overtly focused on body. Whereas the practice really opened up for me when I was able to actually use thought forms as an anchor. Which is a little harder, because it means that you need to have, generally using whatever arises in your mind as the anchor, is best done after we have some kind of stability in our practice. Because the thinking being that if we do it too soon, then we can just get distracted constantly, and we're kind of engaging in this practice of distraction, and not allowing our awareness to kind of maintain a watchful knowing of what's happening. And then so the light in the brow, so it could be the tigle, like a P shaped thing. So, under those circumstances, one just allows oneself to visualize, focus, concentration, and visualize that is occurring, arising right there. A little bindu, a little tigle. Right? And typically the tigle there at the brow is visualized as being white and like a light. Whereas the one at the navel is this kind of like dense, earthy, magnetic tigle down at the navel. And that helps kind of settle us. So I don't know if too somatic was the right way of phrasing it, but for me, eyes closed tends to, if I'm a little tired, I tend to just doze off. Right, so that's not very helpful to kind of, remain awake and spacious in the practice. Eyes open, is something that I prefer, or I've come to prefer. Again, I don't know if I, suffer from some kind of dyslexia, but numbers are a big problem for me. So that's why counting never really worked well. It just got, distracting. I have heard, some people say that you could inhale and exhale and count one. Inhale and exhale and count one. Inhale and exhale and count one. So the counting piece, it doesn't have to be about, accumulating breaths to a particular number. But again, this is just a way of gently focusing the mind. Now, I do know from offering meditation to people kind of in wide varieties of experience, including having done it on psych floors in hospitals, that for some people, focusing on the breath can be just way too intense. It can be triggering. It can lead to anxiety. For those who have issues with their breath, physical health issues, that can be traumatizing. So we need to kind of pay attention to what works for us. And the big piece is, the beauty and the compassion of there being so many different kind of ways of anchoring the mind is that, again, we don't need to master all of them. We don't need to be like a Mozart. We just need to work into what, has valence for us. And so Liz writes, yes, I find using breath initially to be agitating, and then I start altering my breath. Yeah. Then Sai says, would you say then use of whatever works that allows the calming of any excessive turbulence without excessively yeah, so yeah. So what we want to be doing, if we're going to want to be doing anything, is allowing ourselves to very gently settle, right? So we settle the mind through these ways of anchoring the mind and body, through visualize things, physical things, to some extent somatic things. If you're doing mantra recitation, that can be a way to anchor the mind. That Jude writes, in one practice I was taught to start incorporating things that come into my consciousness, meaning if a noise happens, to incorporate and feel it as part of the meditation. Would this still be that type of practice? Yes, yeah. So, when I say anchoring the mind on whatever arises, so sound happens, thought activity kind of sometimes just arises simultaneously, right? just like, even at the base level of like and dislike, right? So it could be that sound, temperature, right? It's beginning to get hot in a lot of different parts of the country. Whatever our relationship is to, heat while we sit. And in a way, like whatever comes up, like whatever is experienced, it's almost as if like symbols flash, symbols of association, very quickly through our mind. And so in these, when the with the instruction of maintaining awareness of whatever is arising in the moment, I think, Jude, your usage of the term coming into your consciousness is kind of very parallel. Right? And so rather than using the bit of focus that happens, whether it's on sound or whatever, we just kind of like gently use that. I'm feeling tired today as well, pain. So sensations of tiredness. What I can't do is close my eyes, because I will literally start to doze off. And I don't know about you, like, I could be physically very exhausted or emotionally very exhausted, and be sitting, with eyes open, focused in that way. And I could be very aware of just what's going on right now, right? With that exhaustion. What does it like that feel like? But I'm still awake and aware. And when I close my eyes, the experience changes. I feel a heaviness down from the top, almost like a heaviness on the top and bottom, and then I begin to kind of fall asleep. And that's that. So Rishi writes, watching the breath was my first teaching, and it had always been my mainstay. As the breath is constant while thoughts come and go, I will often include active use of the mantra. For meditation, I use Om Ahum, Om on the intake, visualizing the two head chakras, gentle hold, while projecting an Ah in the throat chakra, and then an exhale of Om in the heart chakra, while being aware of the lower chakras. Yeah, I mean, one can do that. And you can also visualize the lights associated. So, like it's Om Ahum is, enlightened body, enlightened speech, enlightened mind. And it's white, red, and blue. So you can inhale, white light, hold, that becomes red light, exhale, blue light. Now, yeah, closing the eyes does feel like a cloud or gum sinking into my heart. And then Brett writes, what is the difference between open awareness and Mahamudra? So open awareness, so Mahamudra is the experience of what we could call open awareness. It's, within kind of the tradition itself, the practice is a blending of shamatha and lakton, which is kind of like a tantric vipassana. The whole point, though, is to be open, aware, and yet also stable. Not in the sense of, no thoughts happening, but this is why with shamatha, there's a little bit of concentration involved. Because it allows us to, if one were to kind of start awareness practices without much experience with shamatha, the mind just won't have kind of the structure and the discipline needed to be able to not get easily carried away by what happens when we begin to examine the size of our mind, or the color of our mind. What color, does our mind have? So these are kind of the basic ways in how we settle the body and the mind. I'm going to read this one piece of instruction from Lama Shang. So if you can, just try and close your eyes and take in what I'm about to read. You don't need to fixate on the sound. Just let the sound hit your ear, and whatever arises in the moment from that, just remain curious about. So, Lama Shang says, rest your own mind. This naturally present Dharmakaya, as it is, without modification, and specific experiences will happen. There are three kinds: those of the gradualist, the intermediate, and the immediate. The way that experiences happen for gradualists. At first, there is simply resting, and then experiences definitely happen, and then clear realization arises. When there is the first state of resting, thoughts arise uninterruptedly, like water rushing down a cliff. So you think, am I not able to meditate? The experience of this amount of thoughts arising is the result of the mind being able to rest a little. Before you rested in this way, thoughts arose as they wished, and you were not aware of the procession of thoughts. Next, the mind slows and thoughts diminish, becoming like a slowly moving river. Then the mind will rest, immovable and stable, like the depths of the ocean. Then there will come experiences of clarity, experiences of non-thought, experiences of bliss, like the center of pure space. There is undistracted self-illumination, like a lamp's flame undisturbed by wind. There is lucidity, vividness, and ease, like the rainfall of beautiful flowers. There is brightness, evenness, and insubstantiality, like the sun shining on a cloudless sky. There is transparency and purity, like a bronze vessel filled with water. There is no end to words such as these. They have no basis, appearing like dreams. They are insubstantial, appearing like rainbows. They are ungraspable, appearing like the moon on water. It is like enjoying the pleasures of space. Everything is experienced, but it is experienced as nothing. This non-experience is the supreme experience. All experiences have gone away. Within non-experience, there is nothing to be freed from. So as you can see, there's a bit of a kind of path that Lama Shang points out. And it's not the path of first you do this, then you do this, then you do this. It's more, first you might experience something like this. And this is why this is happening. Then you might experience this happening. And then you might experience that happening. You know, and the words are both specific, but then also a little vague, so as to allow there to be subjective experience. Because what might happen for Brett might not be what happens for Jude, or Rishi, or Sai, or Payne. that the way these things happen are different. And even this whole idea of, there being at least three kinds of, people that experience this: the gradualist, the intermediate, and the immediate. So the gradualist is the kind of person for whom meditation experience just kind of, very steadily develops. The intermediate, it can kind of like, move a little, kind of in fits and starts. And with the instantaneous person, you have these very kind of profound experiences straight off the bat. And it's not, this really doesn't have anything to do with one being better than the other at all. Sometimes the hardest part is kind of recognizing what type you are. And of course, not holding a preference, because there can be great, obviously, joy and, success in being the instantaneous type, like you just kind of get it. But, there's also kind of a sense of, in that speed, sometimes we can move too quickly, and we might kind of, find ourselves where we don't want to be, perhaps a little confused or something like that. So I'm wondering how that resonates for people. Today feels like a low energy day. I don't know if it's just me. Well, let's try it a little bit then. So we'll do a short session. Highly contemplative day. Yeah. It's a lot going on inside and outside the mind. Let's bring it back to meditation a little bit then. So take some time to settle. Stretch my neck a little bit. Oh, and allow yourself to allow yourself to bring your awareness to whatever it is that you use as an anchor. And place your mind gently, according to Talopa's 6 nails, letting go of the past, future, present, letting go of needing to do anything right now. Letting go of the need to analyze or describe this moment, and just resting freely. And slowly bring your awareness back to the group. So Sam asks a question saying, I get a bit confused about the three kayas. What's the easiest way of thinking about them? So I think probably for me, one of the easiest ways of thinking about them is kind of three modes of kind of embodiment, right? And of course, the Dharmakaya is really kind of, enlightened mind essence. So that's kind of like the most abstract. And then the Sambhogakaya is this, illusory bliss body that's inhabited by different meditational deities like Vajrayogini or Chakrasambhara or Tara or Chinrezi. And then the Nirmanakaya is like the embodied physicality of that, right? So you can kind of look at it as like, a gradation from, absolute liberated mind essence down into Sambhogakaya, where there's still there's increased compassion in terms of there's a type of form and activity that arises out of that can benefit other beings, down to the Nirmanakaya, which is the most embodied kind of in the physical worlds that we inhabit and provides tangible benefit for others in that space as well. I don't know if that resonates with you, but I think that's kind of one of the easiest ways of looking at it. So I think, I'm feeling sluggish, and it seems like some others are feeling kind of like there's a lot going on, maybe internally, emotionally, physically, and I mean that's a good thing to talk about, because it means that we need to learn for ourselves also how to be able to take care of ourselves in these moments. So I think I mentioned before that my root teacher, Ani Zangmo or Sunman Zangmo, was big into taking naps when there was this kind of just tiredness that might arise. And I can't stress enough how important it is to enter into our practice lightly. And that even in the initial kind of meditation session that we had, the brief one in the beginning, where I said, when you sit like a mountain, when you sit like a mountain, imagine yourself to have gravity and, a sense of being immovable. That we also need to kind of understand that, when we're feeling overwhelmed or as if we're fried, or that we need space or rest, to go ahead and do that, take care of those things, because we don't need we don't need to be superheroes in our practice, because that's also not the way. Like, tremendous effort doesn't necessarily equate to resting our mind very very naturally. So Cooper writes, when I meditate with my eyes open, I eventually start to see color changes and patterns over whatever else is in the room to see. How do we approach, or how does one approach this? So, these are things that just kind of happen in the visual field of reference. What I don't do is fixate on them. So to just let them happen. Sometimes they happen because, our eyes begin to dry out. Sometimes, for me, I've noticed also, it's relative to how refreshed I'm feeling. But like anything else, whatever arises, and even if there are signs that our meditation is incredibly effective, through the experience of bliss or the experience of greater clarity or greater non-thought, as these things arise, we notice them, and then we should just let them go. There's something about this practice that necessitates the development of an ability to tread with a light touch through our practice. So that this means, even though we may be praying, in our aspiration prayers for all of the signs of, successful meditation practice to arise, when these signs arise, or when different kinds of experiences or sensations arise, to hold on to them is to immediately kind of, miss the point. So I would kind of, try and begin to memorize to an extent, not literally memorizing, but reorient constantly around Tilopa's 6 nails. Forget even this moment, but whatever's arising, even if it's, sense experiences from, limbs that have fallen asleep, or let's say somebody has a heart condition, and and one's heart begins to kind of palpate, to just allow that to arise, and of course, if it's something serious, then to attend to it. But to just allow what's beginning to happen without weaving a narrative around why this might be happening. If that makes sense. Matt writes, strong emotions just arose for me, and that's linked to past events, and that set me thinking briefly about what to do about it. So all three times were present, I could pretty easily let go, actually, but I'm wondering about how this links with bypassing is discussed yesterday. So that's a good question. So it's not spiritual bypassing to let go of what's arising in the moment, right? What's spiritual bypassing might be, so, whatever the past events were, to well, so I don't know what happened in the past event, so it's a little hard to kind of transfer the spiritual bypassing onto that. Letting things go. So from the standpoint of Dharma practice, bringing whatever is arising to the present and letting it just kind of come back to its source, wherever it's arisen from, is kind of the essence of the Buddhist relationship to all appearance when we're engaged in meditation. Experience rises, we allow it to happen, because we're not controlling anything, right? We're watching it, through the experience of awareness or Rigpa, and then we watch, just very kindly, gently, without any fixation on what happens in the next moment. Now, let's say we find ourselves kind of coming back to a kind of trauma that we keep experiencing or coming back to. Working with that as it arises in meditation is not spiritual bypassing, right? What would be spiritual bypassing is after the meditation session, reflecting on the fact that, wow, this thing just kind of keeps coming up. There seems to be something there, right? Something that maybe I would want to explore through other means. Therapy. Different ways of kind of, treating this trauma that arises. Getting into, somatic practices to kind of, understand and release and heal where these different things arise in the body. Or we could bypass by saying, well, I just dealt with it in my meditation practice. I don't need to do any more. So I think that's how we could say that spiritual bypassing can arise, right? How this arises in meditation is not inherently bypassing. But when we can't keep our eyes open to whatever the causal, experience, I don't know what those past events were, but the trauma in relationship to that, I'll give a good example. So like I have gone through some kind of PTSD experience in relationship to COVID. I contracted COVID. I was very sick, and then I work for New York City Department of Correction, and we lost a number of staff to COVID. And while I was quite sick, I also had to do response, telephone response to the families of those who died, and I'm helping out with blessing the bodies of those who end up, in the city's Potter's Field, who have died. There's kind of very large numbers of bodies have kind of amassed in the city morgues, and I bless on Thursday mornings and Friday mornings the bodies that are delivered to be buried in this, public cemetery, the Potter's Field. And 21,000 people died. And I'm still definitely struggling with the magnitude of that number, right? Now, when I go to the Potter's Field, I engage in Dharma practice, right? So I, bless the bodies. I offer an interfaith prayer service. I do my personal practice there. So, I perform Chi, um, and then I do protector practices, and I do other kinds of practices. I bring that experience of just sheer overwhelm into my practice, right? And it feels very powerful and raw and visceral, and that's wonderful. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing. At the same time, I know that the PTSD side of stuff is not going to be necessarily healed by my meditation. It can be impacted positively, and who knows, maybe it could be. But I like to kind of keep a diverse toolkit, right? So the reliance on spiritual refuges, so spiritual friends, therapeutic modalities, self-care, these are the things that allow me to kind of chip away to mitigate the negative impact of PTSD in relationship to this, remaining witness to tremendous loss and suffering and death, while also kind of, attending to the work that needs to be done. So it would be spiritual bypassing to be like, well, I made my offerings on the island. I did the blessings. I connected with, Chittapati, for example, Dharma protector, the Lord of the Cemetery at the biggest cemetery in the country. Almost 1 million people buried there. But that doesn't get rid of the PTSD. And so we even think of Tibetan teachers who lived through the Chinese invasion of Tibet, and the kind of whole Holocaust that happened as a result of that. There are many teachers who experienced PTSD prior to there being much kind of public discussion of what PTSD was. And definitely within Vajrayana circles, PTSD wasn't something that was discussed, right? So the spiritual bypassing piece is to, again, use our faith, our spirituality to distract ourselves or to hide from that which is arising, right? That which is problematic. Again, coming back to, Mahamudra, Mahamudra is the essence of wakefulness, right? But it's not therapy, it's not medicine. It's, so if we're able to have a very healthy understanding of what Mahamudra is, and then what a healthy understanding of the other modalities are that can provide benefit for us, then, we can really care for ourselves and progress on the path in a really powerful way. And I want to echo I want to echo a bunch of things that have been written. I agree 100% with Wambui and Javi that naps are the best, and we should have Sangha nap time. There should be Sangha dream yoga time. And Sai's point about teachers, therapists, healers, caretakers all have to be aware of compassion fatigue. It's a very real pernicious thing. It's true. And part of the addressing of compassion fatigue is to kind of understand and to have a diverse toolkit of ways to care for ourselves. Some of which is, taking breaks. Taking breaks from teaching, taking breaks if you're a therapist, taking a break from, being a therapist. Not for, necessarily for extended periods of time, but take a week off, 2 weeks off, and attend to yourself. Caretakers, I used to work in hospice, home hospice, and so, just as much as I would attend to the spiritual care needs of those who were receiving hospice care, there was, of course, the family members as well. So, who are caregivers who are doing noble work, supporting their loved ones who are dying. But then, kind of understanding that they too need care is important. And on Mondays, amen to dream yoga. I'm sensing a theme. That's great. Let me figure out how we could do this. I guess we kind of did it during the Kumbh Mela. And then Payne's point about, the lamas, a lot of the kind of senior lineage holders were children, young children, when, they fled Tibet. My present teacher, Gyaltsen Rinpoche, was just a young boy. And he was a young boy when Rumtek Monastery, which is the monastery that was built in Sikkim as the seat of the Karmapas after, they fled Serpo in Tibet. I think Gyaltsen Rinpoche must have been like 6 years or 7 years old when, he went there. So to be 5 or 6 or 7 and to be uprooted from your culture, in some cases uprooted from your family, in some cases to never see them again, and then to be a refugee in India, and then to go through that experience, and then to be, provide the spiritual support to your people who come to you because their culture is being destroyed, is really challenging. I have yet to see any studies of PTSD in the Tibetan religious, exile religious communities, but I would like to see that because I can't imagine that it's not there. I know from some teachers that, all sorts of unhealthy ways of coping, like alcoholism, kind of ripped through certain, senior lineage holder communities. And I don't mean Trungpa, but others, most likely as a way of coping with all of the loss. So anyway, we've got about 10 minutes left. And I think that this is a healthy place to pause. And I'm glad that we kind of went in this direction because while it doesn't say in Lama Sheng's text or in any text necessarily, that while we're on the path, so there's the ground, the path, and the fruit, or the view, the path, and the goal, kind of delineated in a couple different ways. The path is the way of practicing. And so there's quite literally the importance of the actual instructions. So the instructions on how to place the body and the mind as we practice shamatha, and how that dawns into Mahamudra. There's, an importance in understanding the way in which experiences arise. It's important to recognize that there are gradual, intermediate, and immediate kinds of students. That as experiences arise, as meditators of all, these 3 different kinds of families, that authentic experience arises. And then it's important for us to also kind of keep our eyes open to that, our awareness open to that. So when these things happen, we let them happen. I really love to cook, and I really love complex recipes because, there's like the art of chopping, right? And there's the art of like I love cooking Indian food, for example. So there are whole parts of dishes that need to be tempered, and you can't speed those processes up. You can't have an instant way of, when you need to cook onions with tomato and various spice mixtures together until there's this kind of thing that happens where it looks as if the oil separates from the spice mixture. That can't be sped up. That needs to that process just needs to happen, and you need to stand there and stir so it doesn't burn. And if you do forget to stir, it will burn. If you try and rush it, the taste will be very raw, and it's the same thing with meditation. Like, we can't really rush past things, and there's not much utility in not having faith in the fact that the signs, not only will the signs of successful practice emerge, we will begin to demonstrate that our practice is powerful, right? by happening, by letting that happen. And then Rishi asked a question. I'm going to tie that into this kind of last piece, like Ryan's point about cooking is almost as good as napping. Yes, and they're very good when they happen like one after the other. Eating and napping. Veggies are great fun. But the most important thing, though, as we go through our practice, is to develop these self-care modalities for when we're tired, for when we get agitated. There will be times where we get frustrated with our practice. We feel like a week goes by and not only is there no change, but maybe it even kind of feels like, we're increasingly distracted, right? And in those moments, having a healthy self-care related response that allows us to not fall into the kind of habit trap of negative reinforcement around practice, because it's really easy to accidentally say, oh, this session is terrible. Actually, I don't know if I like Mahamudra. I'm going to try something else. And I've seen that a lot, where people will ask for meditation instruction and then it's given, and then they try it and then they have a negative experience, and then they want to do something else. So there's an importance in pushing through, and then sometimes as we push through, we also need to care for this body. This body is the seat of all of the energies, all of the inner architecture that will allow us to become enlightened. And if we can't care for it, and if we think that we can push through almost in this capitalist way, where we're just well, run the machines all night, we're going to make a lot of money, kind of thing. We need to not do that. We need to understand that when we're tired out of our minds, that we need to take a break. We need to understand that when we become very frustrated, then it helps to be really gentle with ourselves so that we don't develop an unhealthy relationship to how we experience things that we don't like happening. And then, so that can be, caring for ourselves by napping, by, resting, by going for walks, by taking shorter, having shorter sessions. And then there are spiritual ways of spiritual tools that aid as well. And so, Rishi brings up Vajrasattva practice and the recitation of Vajrasattva's 100-syllable mantra, which is, considered one of the most powerful mantras for eliminating, it's said, negative karma, but also I think maybe a little bit more skillfully is the removal of obstacles to the realization of the mind's essential nature. So you can rely on Vajrasattva practice as a way of kind of just building up two things. I mean, on one level, it's, the kind of innate power that the mantra has is one piece. The other piece is this kind of engaging in this aspirational quality of these practices that allow us to kind of build merit so that our practice can take off. There are offerings to protectors, there's Tara practice, everything that we can engage in with our Mahamudra is what should be done. Then Kim brings up that people have different DNA. There's not one right way to meditate. Meditation should not be a struggle. Yeah, meditation should not be a struggle. And yet, sometimes we can be obstinate, and then we need to push through ourselves. So I tend to agree with you, Kim, and at the same time, we'll go through different phases of our practice where all of a sudden we're pushing back against practice going deeper for reasons that maybe we're not so aware of until we kind of, when I say push, I don't mean push forcefully, but again, through the practice of patience yoked with awareness, Rigpa, we just continue to sit and see what comes in the next moment. And the only reason why I add that in is because I think it's important to not, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but to not, reduce everything to slogans where, this is what we do, this is what we don't do, this is what we do, this is what we don't do, this is what we do, this is what we don't do. And some people set timers. Yeah. So in any event, I think we're at time. I wish you all a lovely afternoon, weekend. Right now, let's dedicate the merit from any benefit that may be experienced here. I ask that all the merit from this session and from all the practice today, all the learning today, be dedicated to all sentient beings so that they can equally experience Mahamudra, cut through everything that causes their suffering, and that all beings, especially those present on this call, are able to empty the pit of samsara. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for Jude for the nap advice. I will attend to it as soon as I can. Take care, guys. Much love, and I'll see you soon.